even the sort of best of thinking can be forgotten over a long period of time. So even if you go in knowing that PPC works a certain way, performs a certain role, that knowledge can get sort of diluted by the data that attribution produces.
The native psychology of using search is no longer keyword driven, it's prompt driven. And how do you target those prompts in the current setup? Well, you can't. Hi everyone, welcome back to Demand Decoded. Dan here with you as usual and joined by Phil here in the studio. And Phil, back for 2026. Obviously did an episode with Josh last time, but
good to be back. Yeah,
back for another year.
It's a new year, a new opportunity. Feel a little out of practice at this, so keen to get back in the flow. But yeah, great to be back on the pod.
Yeah, we'll get into the groove pretty quickly, I'm sure. And in today's episode, we're talking about wasted PPC budget, and there is so much of it in B2B for a number of reasons, lots and lots of different reasons, which we'll go through today. It's one of the channels that are a staple in most businesses, that most marketers lean on when they need, short-term fixes, short-term demand capture. And there are lots of challenges that come with this as a channel, lots of inflated spend, lots of overspend, lots of wasted budget that can be and should be diversified in other areas. And in today's episode, we're really unpacking the entire PPC paradox in B2B marketing and really how you can get the most out of this channel whilst making such efficient use of your budget elsewhere or inside Google PPC as well. Before we get into the podcast today, here's a quick word from our sponsors, HubSpot. Think about listening to this podcast right now. You're probably multitasking and catching 70, maybe 80% of it. Now flip that and imagine only catching 20%. That'd be pretty crazy, right? Yet most businesses only use 20% of their data. All the important details in call logs, emails, and chats just left floating in digital space. HubSpot gives you access to those insights to help your business grow, because when you know more, you grow more. Visit HubSpot.com to get the full picture today.
Paradox is a good word for it. The rules of PPC in B2B differ dramatically from those in B2C, especially. And you're as a business, you probably either do or you don't spend large amounts on PPC, right? It's like some marketers spend little to nothing at all, but then there are businesses out there that are investing hundreds of thousands in PPC annually, and those businesses are prone to becoming caught up in the number of traps that we're going to talk about, a number of traps around what they're measuring, what they're expecting from it, how they're optimizing for it, because the rules in B2B are so different and so specific when it comes to how to make the best investments with budget using this channel and others. So there is loads of really interesting things that we see again and again. And it's fascinating to me because PPC is not a new science. It's a pretty well documented topic, and yet within B2B you see so many mistakes, and I suspect, or so many opportunities I should say, to really refine and scrutinize and improve how that budget is utilized and how much of it is used. And I think that probably comes in a large part from B2C convention, best practice, wisdom, which makes up the bulk of documented advice on the topic, because given how many people are knowledgeable about PPC, there shouldn't be so many opportunities to improve it as dramatically as we do see, but there are. So hopefully people listening will hear things today that can really help them ramp up their PPC, shall we say, smarts, and turn it into something really, really valuable within their go-to-market if they're using it, but also put it in context.
Yeah. And for the listeners, this conversation has sparked from, a few different things, conversations I've had with marketers. Phil, I know you've been working with a business at the moment who are spending, 7 figures on PPC and have huge opportunities to make better use of that budget, even within PPC, like to make more efficient use of that budget.
Yeah.
And we were jamming on some ideas and just talking about these different scenarios, and decided actually we should probably share this insight with everyone else as well.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, let's get into unpack it. The first thing I want to talk about, and I've shuffled our list already, but it's the lack of connection between PPC and revenue. I just want to put that one in first.
Yeah,
actually,
makes sense.
I think it's the big one, because this isn't just a Google PPC issue. It runs throughout everything you do in marketing, but it's very prominent here due to the often large spend in PPC. And what I'm talking about here is ultimately the lack of connection between marketing and sales outcomes, between marketing and closed won revenue.
Right.
If you can't see the connection between somebody clicking one of your Google ads, it integrating with your CRM, you seeing the deal created off the back of that, and it move into closed won or closed loss revenue, you are flying blind when it comes to Google ads. Even if you have a connection between Google ads and your marketing platform, say you just use HubSpot for marketing but not for sales, and you don't have any integration with your CRM, you are still flying blind on what impact that is having on the business. Because even if you're generating 500 leads that you consider good quality from a marketing perspective, but they're closing at 3% into closed won revenue, now that is not an efficient use of time, budget, or resource.
Yep. That line of sight from whatever you're doing in a channel or with a tactic through to revenue is a critical component of effective B2B marketing and decision making. And ultimately, wherever that line of sight stops, that's where you're going to optimize for the outcome. That's the best you can do. So a lot of marketers operate with a line of sight that stops within Google Ads, meaning they are optimizing for the platform metrics, that are relevant and do matter, but optimize Google Ads ultimately. And truth be told, are not always aligned to what the business, KPIs and outcomes are. If you can connect your Google ad spend to your marketing platform, for example, then you might be able to see a bit further, see conversions, how many people clicked and converted and generated a contact as a result. Therefore, you might start optimizing for that, but not for anything beyond it, and not for anything more connected to the business's outcome and results. So the ability to see all the way through to revenue, all the way through to closed won deals, is of paramount importance if you want to be able to optimize for those things, and marketers should always want to optimize for those things. So I think there are two states that marketers should seek to get into, if they're not already, which is one, have that line of sight all the way to revenue, all the way to close revenue, so that you can analyze and optimize for it. But then also be ready and able to segment that revenue. Something that I think limits marketing analysis is when everybody's treated as equal. Or, basically analysis is performed on a single cohort. So great, you might be in a position to look at PPC through the lens of revenue, but if you don't split that revenue down by the the offering, the product type, the sales process, the differences in the deals that are created, then you're analysing all the PPC around a single set of behaviours, buyer behaviours, challenges, sales cycles, and there might be distinct differences. This is most similar to what we used to say about MQLs, which was if you analysed all MQLs as one and you basically blended together the high intent, self-nominating, high converting MQLs that actually became pipeline and revenue, and you lump them together with top of the funnel, low intent, lead scored MQLs that barely ever converted, the resulting rate of conversion that you looked at would be an average of the two, and wouldn't tell you really anything about what was working and what wasn't and how to optimize it. And the same is true here. You can be getting great results or seeing results all the way through, but there is another level of detail that's worth applying to make sure that you can build the most efficient PPC campaigns, the most efficient go-to-market and not treat all deals as equal, all clicks as equal, and all ads as equal.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant insight. I think translating that into what you would expect to see in Google Ads, this is essentially segmenting campaign revenue. There will be campaigns in your setup that ultimately drive a lot more revenue for you as a business than others, and we were
Yeah, and
chatting about
margin potentially.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. There will be more that are more efficient for the business to deliver upon. From a campaign perspective, you're going to see that branded search, if you're running that, is driving the most revenue, like out of Google Ads, guaranteed.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any debate that if you're heavy in branded search and people are clicking on your brand name, they are more likely to convert than anything else, because they are actually already aware of your brand. You've already done such a fantastic job of letting them learn about you in whatever way that is, having that mental availability of your brand, that they've come to a navigational search for your brand, but have just clicked on an ad because it was the easiest thing in their view to actually go ahead and navigate through.
Absolutely. Really common problem still today in B2B PPC, which is really hard to say fast.
Yeah. Let's actually chat about branded search in a minute.
Yeah.
The other segmentation based on campaigns is likely to look at your different product groups, your different service areas. What are maybe more transactional? What are more commodity based, rather than lengthy sales cycles that require in-depth buyer research, in-depth, knowledge, brand trust? Whereas there might be other products that you sell, other services that you offer that require none of those things. And really, the core buying trigger is, can we get this cheaply?
Yeah. PPC is most effective at selling or helping to sell lower research, more transactional offerings where buyers are less minded to do in-depth research and form a list of preferences and a short list of suppliers and so forth, and they're more prepared to go with options that are presented and available when the need arises. So as we know, PPC is best at capturing existing demand from people who have intent to buy a thing or a service, but only really when those services are, like you say, transactional. The risk is considered lower of choosing one supplier over another. That's where it's best. It won't work nearly as well, when it's a more considered purchase, a longer sales cycle, more research is required, and when a short list of preferred vendors is being formed mentally. You can't really disrupt that with PPC very effectively. And of course, in PPC, it's all a question of spend versus outcome. The spend needed to achieve those sorts of outcomes can get really disproportional. So it's not effective use of budget to try and play in that space. So like you say, if you've got offerings that are transactional and are selling via PPC, then great. But if you're selling something or building something which is more considered, more complicated, longer sales cycle, PPC is likely to perform worse. So you've got to analyze in that context.
Yeah, there may be a justification to say, well, let's run some PPC against, some of our sectors or offerings in alignment with the rest of the things we're doing to drive brand. And like, now you have marketing basically, which is a cross combination of everything, and the more people see your brand and have more mental availability for you through other channels might actually impact positive click-through rate in Google, because they've already heard of your brand. And
exactly,
things can happen.
And I think that comes down to marketers have to think of Google PPC as a demand capture mechanism. It helps them to capture demand that has been created, either by work done by them and contemporaries to create category awareness and to be on those short lists. And then you need to look at, well, if people are trying to find us to act on that, does PPC help? Does PPC contribute to us being, receiving that visit and getting that conversion? There are situations where it can, or demand exists for lower risk products and services where it's more transactional, and PPC works there really well. But PPC doesn't create any of that revenue.
Demand.
Well, indeed, or revenue in the sense that it is simply a mechanism of getting those people into your brand, your estate, your CRM. The revenue that comes is a product of. It's typically going to be. It's unlikely that a PPC ad will be, certainly in the more considered side of things, where we're talking about PPC being out helping you capture demand that you've created, be the first thing that people see. So it isn't the trigger for them to talk to you, but it may be a very important or valuable way to assist them on their journey towards you, depending on what it looks like out there in terms of the landscape of those search results. And again, that's an analysis that people need to perform about, looking at PPC through branded versus non-branded lenses, through organic visibility versus none against the search terms that they're using, and deciding whether PPC is a worthy method of getting people from there into your world, or whether you can do that without the PPC spend, as we'd said with the branded side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of marketers are aware, or maybe even subconsciously aware, that Google PPC is a way to capture in-market demand. But I also think this can create an issue in itself, because of usually the ability to software attribute Google ad to a contact or a lead at the minimum. They might not be able to track all the way through to, deal and revenue, but just the ability to do some sort of conversion tracking to prove to their boss, leadership, whoever gives them the budget, that they're doing something with this budget. It kind of creates its own issue, that because of the ability to measure that so easily, Google Ads should be and is a easy channel to measure the ROI on.
Yep.
There shouldn't be really any excuse as to why you can't at least track conversions on your website from Google Ads.
Definitely.
But because of the ease of that, it can force marketers to over-index on demand capture in general. And I know we're kind of swaying away from the topic here, which is wasted ad budget, but ultimately this is like wasted marketing budget at a higher level, because you're over-indexing on this one channel that's capturing 5% of your market that are in market to buy, and not realizing the potential to build your brand in the market, like actually create demand for your business in a year, 2 years time, and the bigger impact that can have, and the reduced cost that can actually have as well from a acquisition standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, there's an attribution trap there, isn't there? And
wish I said that.
Two things come to mind. One is that even the sort of best of thinking can be forgotten over a long period of time. So even if you go in knowing that PPC works a certain way, performs a certain role, that knowledge can get sort of diluted by the data that attribution produces, and you can end up with, as an organization that has forgotten that and is now thinking about, oh wow, look how much of our revenue is attributed to PPC. You need that attribution data because you want to optimize PPC's ability to help you capture demand and convert it into revenue. But the trap is thinking that because the revenue is attributed to PPC, PPC is the channel that you exclusively credit with the creation of that revenue, and you go all in on it myopically at the expense and at the exclusion of other things that may have created some of that demand, that create demand for other things that you offer and that go before PPC in the buying journey. So attribution data is really a double-edged sword. It's incredibly useful for marketers to help them optimize different channels, different platforms that they use, but you have to keep it in that context and not fall foul of the very common misunderstanding, which is attribution data tells you exactly how and where revenue is created and why, and it doesn't.
Yes, it's using it as gospel, which is so dangerous, because from a Google PPC standpoint, it kind of is gospel,
right? You won't be told not to focus on those sorts of things,
but that's where it doesn't translate that easily into other channels, which is why marketers get stuck in this trap, which I really like the way you put that, this trap of just plowing more and more budget into Google PPC because it's easy to measure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because if you see, well, from this spend on PPC, we generated this many deals and this much revenue, and that's all your data, then it's, it's easy to think, well, let's invest what we have more in PPC.
Yeah.
And there are times when that might produce an increase in the revenue that we receive, which reinforces that model. But long term, big picture, that correlation usually doesn't hold true.
Yeah.
There's a number of reasons why, but ultimately you simply can't keep investing in PPC and grow revenue in line.
Yeah.
In B2B, typically doesn't work. And yeah, but if that is your entire world in terms of thinking and data, then you forego the opportunity to look at other things that can grow revenue outside of PPC and improve PPC's performance at the same time.
If you're listening to this right now, you're probably doing what every other B2B marketer is doing, asking, how do I get my brand cited in ChatGPT? How do I show up in Gemini, Perplexity, Claude? And at Blend, we help you do exactly that. We engineer visibility in AI search for B2B companies. We build the content, implement the technical optimization, and track your performance across every major AI platform. So when buyers are researching solutions like yours, your brand gets recommended. We know how to engineer visibility in AI search because we built a framework and proved it on ourselves first. And this took months of experimentation, but in the end it delivered 470 high-value prompt appearances, 80% citation rate across prompts, and 250% more AI-sourced leads. We proved the framework, and now we're starting to roll it out across customers who are seeing similar results. So, if you want to dominate AI search in your category, visit blendb2b.com to learn more about our AI search services. I want to tell you about a podcast that's essential if you're trying to apply AI in your business, and let's face it, who isn't right now? The Next Wave, hosted by Matt Wolf and Nathan Lands from the HubSpot podcast network. As leading AI creators, they break down the latest tools and technologies into what you can actually use to grow your business. As AI reshapes business operations, Matt and Nathan help you investigate what's worth implementing. If you're deciding where to invest in AI for your marketing or business, they cut straight to what delivers results. The Next Wave, available wherever you get your podcasts. Let's have a chat about that now, which is improving the performance of PPC campaigns, which is where a lot of budget is wasted by not being efficient use within PPC, even if Google PPC is the right channel for you, which it is, by the way. For a lot of businesses, they do have a use case for it in lots of areas within their business. But you mentioned conversion rate experts earlier who did a good study about wasted ad spend and where efficiency gains are. Do you want to touch on that?
I mean, they did an incredible article about, how brands that really crush PPC manage to do it. And word of warning, it's a B2C. It's not a B2B exclusive study. So you definitely have to sort of take it and translate it to the B2B space. But nevertheless, they showed through analysis and some quite clever arithmetic that one of the major factors in PPC campaign performance ultimately isn't campaign structure. It isn't keyword targeting. That is important, and you need to get that right. Those are like the hygiene factors that technical SEO was back in the day. But the landing page experience, the conversion rate on the landing page, and its effect on quality score are two ways that brands that really leverage and make the most of PPC outperform others that struggle. And I think that is because the tendency is to look at the platform metrics, look at what keywords have we got, what match type have we got, what's our bid strategy, when and where are we appearing, and maybe not give as much attention to the slightly harder part, which is how do we turn it into money? How do we turn it into revenue? What experience do we offer when people do click, and how effective are we at converting? Google doesn't hide the fact that those things impact quality score, but I think it isn't as clear to us how dramatic the effect of that can be on the performance of that channel. So I think when it comes to looking at your PPC performance and the efficiency of your campaigns, you'd be well-minded to look at things like, yes, quality score and the experience and conversion rate on landing pages through that lens of different products, different pipelines, different revenue, different margin structures, so that you're not optimizing things that are just bad for you when they do close through PPC as a cost base. And then also obviously look at campaign structure in terms of best practices around, keyword grouping, ad group structure, campaign structure, ad display times. If you're pushing out ads 24/7, are your audience buying 24/7? Very, very quick thing to check and find out whether you can be saving money by not showing ads when your buyers aren't actively buying, which you should know based on when they inquire.
Otherwise,
I've seen some
who else
really
is clicking.
I've seen some really interesting setups over the years, and one stands out where, so like call tracking, for example, shows you when people are making those calls, confirms that it's in business hours, and therefore to target business hours. Geographic targeting equally, and then there's budget settings to check so that your best performing campaigns in terms of demand capture don't run out of budget before lower performing ones. And then very often in campaigns there's just things that you can turn off and test whether they impact your performance or not. Branded search, for example, but also certain ad groups. And then also you can look again at what are we generating as a net result, what's the margin, what's the conversion rate, what's the pipeline performance, is this a campaign worth running in PPC versus not. So there's loads of ways that you can optimize your use of PPC. And I think the quality score and the landing page experience is a massive opportunity for quite a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And in B2B, this is a particular problem because so often service pages, solutions pages are actually more generic than B2C, I would say, that have specific specifications, and they might have different configurations of products, and the landing page experience is typically more targeted to a keyword than B2B that can be a bit more fluffy and broad.
Yeah, I mean, there is a challenge here, which is like back to our original point. This only works if the product being offered makes sense to market this way, and there is sufficient demand for it in terms of volume. Because one of the things that stops B2B marketers doing this is lower volume on the keywords they're targeting, which can drive a couple of challenging symptoms. One, it can challenge a more generic and aggregated approach, which is just counterproductive when you're doing PPC. You want to be as focused and as specific as possible, which is a struggle if you've got a low volume to deal with. And if you've got lower volumes and you've got smaller niches, then the effort required to create optimized experiences for them can feel like relatively like a high expense compared to what you're going to get back from it. But you made a key point. Your standard website service page is designed and built to perform a different role to somewhere that a PPC visitor lands and arrives. All things need to be done in an iterative manner, tested, hypothesized, tested, and iterated upon, because there's no one single hard and fast works for everybody approach to this. But that landing page effectively is, has to provide the information that the buyer needs in order to take that action or not. And your service pages might not do it. They just might not do it because they're part of a different journey and different experience.
Yeah, and the service page, you don't know what keyword somebody has used to get there. You don't know what path they've taken to get there.
Totally
your
true.
Google ad, you know that.
Yeah,
you can design that page centered around that keyword and the likely experience they've been on based on that knowledge. Like it's a great opportunity to tailor that content. And I forgot about this, but we've got a great case study with a business called Daytel, and there is a PPC section of this. It was a complete project from brand, website, demand generation strategy, but they were already using Google Ads, and they're a professional services company. Had a decent budget for Google PPC, but the conversion rate from traffic to high intent MQL in this case was pretty poor at 0.3%.
Right.
But by introducing those custom landing pages built for particular campaigns, particular keywords in some cases, if there's enough volume to warrant that. Paid search MQL to conversion rate increased to 2.91%.
Yeah.
Like a huge step purely by tailoring the experience that somebody's getting off the back of their search. And overall, high intent MQLs grew 100% year on year. So like it does show the power of putting the effort into this. Like it can be so easy just to set up Google ad campaigns. Anybody can do it, really. Like there's enough documentation out there now. There's enough videos showcasing how to do it. Putting in the effort to really optimize these campaigns, really optimize the destinations, does take time, does take effort, but the reward can be so much bigger off the back
completely. I mean, if you look at that increase in conversion rate means the same budget is doing just a heap more, and that puts marketers in a position to make different decisions about their budget.
Yeah.
They could lower their budget to continue generating the same level of volume of leads that they did before and put that budget elsewhere. That it doesn't have to be only increase the output that you get for the same budget. It can allow you to redistribute budget, which is really, really powerful position to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. Wanted to move on a little bit to the mask that PPC can sometimes give to other problems you might have. And again, maybe straying slightly away from the topic here, but hyper-investment, over-investment in PPC can mask other problems, like we've just spoken about, poor website conversion.
Yeah.
Because you can prove that X amount of budget is converting at this amount and maybe even closes at this rate, you can just, keep on putting more and more budget behind Google Ads. But actually, it doesn't allow you to zoom out and look at how's our messaging performing?
Right.
Like how is our overall marketing strategy performing in alignment, with this channel? How's our positioning performing? Like what's our brand? There's all these other areas that are not being focused on because there's not this like healthy view of the brand.
Yeah. If you're really caught up, or shall we say, focused on ad copy, click, conversion, then you might not be thinking broader, as you say, about the positioning that you have as a company, the message that you put out on your website and elsewhere. Thinking about the places, the channels, the platforms where your buyers, your high value buyers potentially do their research, hang out, either before using PPC or instead of using PPC, to navigate to you.
Yeah.
It's only one piece of the puzzle, and if the effect is that in your business it's the one that's getting all the focus and attention, then you may be missing the opportunity to improve other things that can also, have that significant impact, either reducing cost per customer, moving you towards higher value customers and deals, repositioning you, etc., etc. Ultimately, if you can get people to convert on your website, freely, as in you didn't pay for that visit, it's going to be better value.
Yeah.
So things that do that are, valuable considerations that you might you can see businesses that are dependent on PPC neglecting.
Yeah, I mean, being dependent on it causes so many issues in itself, right? When performance drops in PPC, you're almost forced to add more budget because what else do you do? It's like we're totally dependent and reliant on this channel, which is, the issue that the business you've been speaking to has had and others, that when performance drops, let's add more budget because what else do we do? And you neglect these other areas that might be the root cause.
Yeah, absolutely. PPC, like dependence on PPC, like you say, means that the only thing that you have to really adjust is how much you spend on it, or your optimization of the campaigns.
Yeah.
But even then, even when you do all of that really, really well, we're still looking at conversion rates that are down in the single digits. Okay, it's not the most it's not the when you think about that conversion rate, it's not the most exciting channel in terms of what you're getting for the amount you spend.
Yeah.
What 1% conversion rate, 2% conversion rate, that like budget versus what you're getting there. So having some budget to look at those other areas that can generate lower cost per acquisition of leads and customers, definitely really, really worth doing. And it's a case of saying that leads us on to the next topic, but of course, like you say, pouring more and more PPC budget into PPC is the only way to defend against declining performance if all other things are held constant. But performance will most likely decline regardless, because the nature of these platforms is to get more expensive over time. And although markets grow, B2B markets do grow, the volume of search within them is typically not that of B2C or really highly transactional markets.
Grow at the same rate.
So you can't just pour money into PPC and grow results in line. A lot of marketers will have struggled with the sort of topping out of their campaigns. Like, you can't spend more even if you wanted to, because the volume isn't there to do it. And going broad doesn't help you necessarily generate more. If you've got other products and services to offer, then okay, maybe you can add those in, but you can't broaden the context around what you're already promoting via PPC. So there's simply a limit. More budget allocated doesn't necessarily translate into more results.
I mean, well, let's talk about the channel risk in itself, because PPC, and particularly if you're over reliant on PPC, and any channel actually, but let's focus on that, you are beholden to the platform.
Absolutely.
To the in this case Google, what Google do and what they choose to do with their ads, where they place them, how they show them, like the interface they give to users, is ultimately going to affect not just your ads, not just your marketing results, not just your pipeline, not just your revenue. Like, the margin you create as a business could be totally dependent on how Google choose to show your ads and change their platform.
It's rented land. You're subject to their changes to algorithms and the way systems work, which changes over time, usually subtly, thankfully, but we have no control over it. The tendency of platforms like this is to always get more expensive to use, because there is more and more competition, there's more and more saturation, there are often more users, but there are more brands competing for their attention, and the businesses operating them typically want more revenue and more profit. So prices, per unit, per click in this case, only tend to go up. And then in this particular case, we've got the potential for seismic change because of AI. So AI search is already here. Everybody's using it increasingly. It's already decreased. So AI overviews, it's been reported, have decreased ad click-throughs. Now, that's a general statement and is probably much more prevalent on the informational type content where AI overviews are prevalent, and B2B shouldn't be spending PPC budget there. They should be on the commercial side, where I guess that impact is less extreme. But so far it seems that the effect of AI is to increase search usage. So far we've seen search use go up, but decrease click-throughs on search results and ads. Now, if Google comes along and makes AI mode the default,
which it will,
what is that going to do? We have no way of knowing, to the efficacy of your PPC budget. It's in their interests to not completely nuke PPC. It's their revenue stream. But the change is completely unpredictable.
So right now, Google has something called Performance Max ads. And I'm not a PPC expert, so don't quote me on this, but I'm friends with lots of marketers who have tried Performance Max ads, which are ultimately where when Google actually, I'm that certain that AI mode will be the default browsing experience in years to come. When it ultimately makes that change, Performance Max ads, they'll probably rebrand it or something because of the hate it gets at the moment, will allow you to tap into different kinds of queries Because the issue we're going to have is that you're no longer targeting keywords.
Yeah.
And this is becoming this is actually a good segue on this episode, I think, because it talks about the bigger long-term issue that we might see around PPC, which is that, the native psychology of using search is no longer keyword driven. It's prompt driven. And how do you target those prompts in the current setup? Well, you can't. So you have to use something like performance max ads, which ultimately give Google the freedom to show your ads whenever it's relevant to do so with a few set criteria, but it's quite loose. It's like a broad match keyword ultimately. And I mean, the marketers that I've spoken to that have run these have had dire performance from them, absolutely dire.
Yeah, I mean, in the longer term, before AI, performance max was always pretty much, unusable in a B2B context. Wasn't constructive in a B2B context. Like audience expansion, often didn't help you, because it does the opposite of what you need it to do, which is it broadens and dilutes and spreads the message far and wide to get impressions and clicks, rather than creating focus and targets and being really specific to the right people with the right product and offering. So it worked against us in the most part. Now that's in a traditional PPC setting, well aware that performance max is the only way to sort of play in the AI PPC space. So marketers do have to continually be alert to these things and be ready to test and change. But if it's anything like performance max was in traditional PPC, it won't necessarily help marketers get high quality results, high rates of return, even if it does give them access. So the question becomes, is that a worthwhile, thing to do? It's very hard to know. You're right. AI search isn't keyword driven. There are themes within there, which I presume will be the crux of how ads are displayed. But this is a new frontier. It's a whole new realm that we're entering. And I don't think that it will be a simple case of switching over and seeing the same result for the same budget. So that's something that has to be, really keep an eye on. If your audience is moving as quickly as everybody else to AI search and does so when AI mode becomes, the norm. Worth mentioning, right, that AI search is already here. People are using ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, AI mode by switching to it in Google to search. So a shift is already happening. But as with all things, there are industries and markets which are quick to move, and there are ones that are slower to move. So your audience may be at the front edge of that transformation or at the latter edge. So that's another important factor to bear in mind when it comes to deciding how and when and where you'll spend your budget, and will it be on PPC.
It's exciting though. Like there's so many other ways, more creative, more exciting ways you might be able to spend that budget, and this is almost forcing you to look at those, and like it can be fun if you enjoy marketing in that way.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, as you've said many times on the podcast, it all comes back really to understanding your audience, how and why they buy, where they are, what triggers them, what tools and platforms and channels do they use. That lights the way, and will help us through all of these transformations. But it does require that looking, that taking that higher level view that isn't solely about how is PPC performing, and being aware of buyer behavior changes and who you want to sell to and what you want to sell to them and how you can most effectively do it.
Yeah, for sure. All right. We've exhausted my list. Did you have anything else you want to touch on before we round off here?
No, I think we've covered all the key points. It's not, all PPC is bad.
Not at all.
There are definitely fantastic applications of PPC, but more often than not, there is opportunity to refine, using a B2B lens ultimately. And that might be weeding out B2C, best practices that have been applied, or taking a more granular look at what's generated in terms of pipeline and revenue, what products you're offering, et cetera, to really make your PPC budget earn its keep
Yeah.
and to help you, optimize it, even if that means it frees up budget to do other things, which we agree are very enjoyable to do, very rewarding, and can drive lower cost per customer over long periods of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like we've mentioned, it is a demand capture channel. So
Right.
all of that budget should be working hard for you to capture that demand, because Google Ads aren't generating brand awareness for you. You can't make the excuse for the budget doing something else other than capturing in-market demand.
Right.
So you need to scrutinize the investment based on that. Look at the, as we've said, segment the campaigns, look at how you drive efficiency and conversions and further down the funnel. And yeah, just really scrutinize that budget.
Agreed.
All right, cool. Let's wrap it up there. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of Demand Decoded, and we will catch you next time. Bye, everyone.
See you.
Before you go, if all you can think about right now is AI search and how buyers are using it to find products in your category, we should talk. At Blend, we've built a proven framework for answer engine optimization. We tested it on ourselves first and saw 470 high-value prompt appearances, 80% citation rate, and a whopping 250% increase in AI source leads. That's real high-intent leads who are finding us through AI search. We've since rolled it out to dozens of clients who are now seeing similar results. Our AI service engineers your visibility in ChatGPT, Perplexity, AI mode, Gemini through structured content, schema markup, and continuous optimization, and measurement through our partner Scrunch. If you want to show up when your buyers are asking AI tools for recommendations in your category, find out more about our AEO services at blendb2b.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.